Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. It's a little bright. I forgot to turn down the exposure setting on the camera after I turned it up filming the cabinet the other day. That's okay. This will be a bright, sunshiny episode because today, this morning, I finished a book, an actual book. And this is something a little different for me, and I want to kind of talk about it. This is not fiction. The book is called Room to Dream, and it was written by and about David Lynch, by David Lynch and Kristine McKenna. And this is a very unique book for a very specific audience, and so I can't tell you that I universally recommend everybody read this book because it's not for everyone. But I'm extremely glad that I read this book. If you've been around for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say that I'm a David Lynch fan. I have been a David Lynch fan since I saw Twin Peaks in the 90s. I was very inspired. The Lost Highway was a huge movie for me. The soundtrack particularly, because I was a big Nine Inch Nails fan. So, coming into my teenage years and my early adulthood, David Lynch was a big foundation of that. And when I saw a lot of his earlier works, I was really inspired because I really felt connected to David Lynch, the filmmaker, and David Lynch, the Lynchian feel. And so I wanted to read this book for a while, and I finally got it and read it. And it's a fascinating book. It's a fascinating book because Kristine McKenna, hadn't heard about her before this book. She's a journalist, I suppose, and a sometimes biographer. Basically started to do an investigative journalist's view or look into the various decades and eras and film breakdowns of David Lynch's life. And she talked to people who helped make projects with him and, his wives and all that sort of stuff. And so she would write a chapter of hers about whatever period of David's life that she was investigating at that point in time. And then the next chapter would be David's response to that, where David would just share his thoughts and his memories from those times, or, the people that she interviewed, he would talk about them. And it's a very off-the-cuff type thing. I think if you read it, oddly, the last David Lynch chapter in this book is the most salient. Prior to that, you get the feeling that he sat down with a tape recorder and just dictated and somebody typed out whatever it was he said. Because it's this very flowing, very David Lynch style of talking where ideas, whatever is in his head, he just says it. And it doesn't necessarily follow any kind of narrative or storytelling. It's just, here's ideas and thoughts, and he'll get off on these little tangents about some store or whatever. So it's a very weird book to read. But it's also fascinating for me. For me in particular, this book is fascinating because what I found in here was, hundreds of pages, 500 and some pages of a man's life that I feel very close to. Not that I've had any success that's even a 1/1,000,000th of the success that David Lynch has had artistically, but because for all of my life, I've been searching for the thing that David found out, and that is that what is important to him is realizing an idea, whatever that idea is. He accepts that idea and he realizes that idea in that moment. And I think when I was young, I was an artist. I drew a lot. I was a writer. I wrote a lot. I used to write a comic book that I hand drew and gave to my friends. I turned to poetry in high school and kind of short form romance type stuff. I did photography. I've never been a painter. Obviously, woodworking and making. I experimented with film. I actually have footage of a short film that I wrote and shot in 2002 that I've never done anything with. I experimented with, woodcut and lino cut. I've experimented with sculpture, and none of it has ever stuck with me. And I've never really said that's my thing. I'm a this. David Lynch wanted to be a painter. That's all he ever wanted to be. And he started painting and painting and painting and painting, and he studied art, and he learned how to be a painter. And from that, the idea of moving paintings happened in his brain, and that's how we got this David Lynch feel to his cinematography. It's very much a moving painting for him. And what I have learned through this book is that David is all of those things. He is a painter, he is a sketch artist, he is a woodworker, he is a sound designer and an editor and a musician, and I mean, he literally just, whatever the motivation is, whatever the idea is, he sees it through. And that is the courage that I have lacked my entire life. I've always felt this pull towards the artistic, towards the exhibition, right? Obviously, I'm being an exhibitionist here on YouTube to just because I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I had something to share, and I've just never figured out what that thing is. I never found my form. I never found my medium, and I thought I was supposed to find a medium. I thought I was supposed to say, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm an artist, and I was supposed to stay in my lane. But what I've discovered is, though if I say the name David Lynch, you probably think of Twin Peaks, and you probably think of David Lynch, the director. David Lynch is just multifaceted. He has so many aspects of creativity that he leans into at any given moment, and it's fascinating to me. And it's that kind of like that courage that I never had. I never had the courage to actually try to be an artist. I never went through with it. I never figured that part of myself out. But reading this book, man, it's so fascinating, right? It's so fascinating, the road that he took to get to the level of success he made. Being happy to make a couple $100s a month doing a paper route so that he could spend the rest of his time on his art. It's just, I never got to experience that level of dedication to a craft, because I've always felt like I had obligations as a member of society, obligations as a husband, as a father, that I had to provide, and that it wasn't okay for us to, live in squalor so that I could pursue something, a creative field. Never had the courage to see that through. David did, and this is a catalog of that courage, and it's really inspiring. I don't normally read biographies, and I don't normally read nonfiction like this, but this was fascinating and inspiring. I don't know that I've felt this inspired in a very long time. It's a very, very, very good read. And if you're a David Lynch fan, I think you have to read it. It's a must read. But Room to Dream is, well, I think I still have room to dream. I think that's what I'm taking away from this, right? I might be 43. I'm halfway to the end, but I think that means I have 43 more years, or maybe more, to try. Maybe it's time to put the fear aside and try. I think that's what I learned from this. We'll see. Yeah. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is melanin. It is the pigment that determines the color of one's hair, eyes, and skin. Tamara is unwilling to accept that no matter how much time she spends on the sunny beaches of the Mediterranean, she will not achieve her desired tan due to her lack of melanin. Melanin. M-E-L-A-N-I-N. Now, that I was immediately pulled out of that little snippet there because I have a friend named Tamara, and she is a very, very dark-skinned, powerful black woman, and she's amazing.